Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I'm here to talk about Andre Petrosky versus Jacob Malkoun. Jacob Malkoun is 28 years old, 7-3 as a pro now, and he's given up 3 inches of height to 32-year-old Petrosky, who is 10-2. Andre Petrosky is the bigger man, and as is the case in most fights, he's the stronger man. Guy's built like a brick shithouse, and he's got physicality on his side. Very strong middleweight. Jacob Malkoun, he's 3 inches shorter, but the guy is tight and compact and has a really good work rate. The guy can work hard for 15 minutes. He is an excellent wrestler, even if he's not the most physical wrestler. But here in this fight, they each have a few losses. They've been knocked out once each. Jacob Malkoun was knocked out in his debut to Phil Hawes. Phil, what could have been Hawes, as I like to call him. I just made up that nickname now. But Phil Hawes had all the offense in the world, none of the defense, and his offense got through on Jacob Malkoun. He knocked him dead in 18 seconds. Although I have to say, that would have been a very interesting fight if they went 15 minutes. That would have been interesting, the wrestling of Phil Hawes. But his danger was there, and he got Malkoun out of there. And I wrote Malkoun off there. I was like, this guy doesn't belong. And I thought he was going to get knocked dead in his next fight against Abdul Razak Al Hassan. And instead, he dominated him. And then he dominated AJ Dobson. And then he had a really close, razor thin fight with Brendan Allen, where Brendan Allen just scraped by with a decision. And now, look at him. He's headlining the next Fight Night event after this one against Chris Curtis now. But that was a very big fight and could have been a huge win for Jacob Malkoun. But instead it went against him. Still, my opinion of him only skyrocketed with that loss. And his most recent loss was to Cody Brundage by disqualification, where I think he was certainly on his way to a victory, and I think on his way to his first finish in the UFC. But instead, he slipped, made a mistake with an illegal strike, and Cody Brundage got the victory. And now he's on the main card of UFC 300. Them's the breaks. But as far as Jacob Malkoun goes, he's really impressed me with his work rate. I think he's an above average UFC fighter, where I never would have thought I'd be saying that after that first fight with Phil Hawes. But he's looked pretty damn healthy, too. Nobody's knocked him out. And the only guy that's been knocked out recently has been Andre Petrosky. His one knockout loss comes in his most recent fight to Michel Pereira, making his middleweight debut. And he cracked him with a big shot, and Petrosky, I don't think he went dead. He didn't go unconscious like Jacob Malkoun did, but it fucked him up and he shelled up and whatever, which might bode well for his health compared to getting knocked dead like Malkoun. But as far as getting finished goes, shelling up and getting teed off on, yeah, that's not a great trait. But Petrosky, he is a much bigger, stronger guy here, and there's a chance he could prove to be a bad matchup, negating the grappling, kind of like he did with Nick Maximov. Nick Maximov, who's a guy that Jacob Malkoun out-grappled and outworked, while Andre Petrosky snapped him down and strangled him in a matter of seconds. And I suppose that's a possibility here, as is the knockout, to be honest. I think if either guy was to get knocked out, it would be Petrosky knocking out Jacob Malkoun. Because Malkoun was knocked dead between the two of them. And Petrosky is also much bigger, stronger, and he's shown to have decent hands, Petrosky. Maybe not in the UFC, although they've been there for him. But yeah, he's got some decent hands, and with that physicality to back him up, I'd say the first knockout goes to him. But I'm not predicting a knockout. I think might bet on it, but I think Jacob Malkoun will be able to get this fight to the ground. I think he's going to slow Andre Petrosky down in one way or another. If he's able to go through the wrestling right away, he'll definitely slow him down. But even without that, just his pace and his pressure, I think he'll be in Petrosky's face, and I expect him to suck some of the life out of him and take over the fight. I do think a finish is very likely, even though Jacob Malkoun's only got 2 finishes in his 7 wins. And I've seen one of them. I've tried to see two, but I've seen one and it came on the ground. It's not like he knocked the guy out. And I could only envision him finishing Andre Petroski because I have doubt in Petroski being the nail. I envision Petroski getting finished in most fights that he is losing. In fact, as a pro and as an exhibition fighter, he's been finished in all three of his losses. Brian Battle, Michel Pereira, and Aaron Jeffrey, who lost in Bellator last week. But Petroski, he's a guy that I wrote off as somebody who had shit cardio coming into the UFC. And he himself said he was a 7-minute fighter trying to get over that hump after getting finished by Brian Battle in the UFC. And then he turned a corner. He got 2 third-round finishes, even if he wasn't tested so much, but 2 third-round UFC finishes. And then he won 2 gritty 3-round decisions over good fighters, Wellington Turman and Gerald Mearshart. And despite not looking like fucking Merab Dvalishvili, he was the better man in the third round in both those fights. So he's erased some of the stain of him being a having shit cardio, but I think it's going to be a little different with the pressure of Malkoun. If he doesn't finish Malkoun, he's going to have that guy working, going after his legs for 15 minutes, if not ripping him to the mat. And I think it's the kind of pressure that would break somebody like Andre Petroski. So a finish is certainly likely. And so far, that's my only bet. Well, I bet on Jacob Malkoun as well. But the finish at plus 145, I like more comfortably than Jacob Malkoun at minus 215. I think it covers, of course, either one of their chins failing, and I would favor the knockout to go to Petroski, but it also covers Jacob Malkoun taking over this fight and Andre Petroski being a horrible nail with a monstrous pressure top fighter on top of him. So Jacob Malkoun is the pick. I've got him winning, I guess, early round 3 TKO. I got to say early round 3 because it makes me look like I'm consistent in having bet on the under 2.5 rounds. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit, and check out my other videos.